Hello and welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Emerald Maraid, and I'm so glad you're here. This space is devoted to real, raw, and radically honest conversations with some of the most magnetic, diverse, and wonderful humans I've had the honor of crossing paths with. From mystics to makers, teachers to truth seekers, this is a home for anyone craving depth, connection, and clarity. At the heart of this podcast is a mission to unshame the human experience. We're here to dismantle the silence, to bring to light what we've been taught to hide, and to reclaim our voices through storytelling. Whether we're unpacking grief, celebrating joy, exploring sensuality and identity, or getting curious about what it really means to live an authentic and meaningful life, nothing is off limits here. This is a community built through conversation, a place where you get to feel seen, embraced, and reminded that you're never alone. So get cozy, stay open, and let's get naked in the most soul-expanding, liberating way possible. Welcome to Naked Conversations. Hello, Lux. Welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. It's so lovely to connect with you this morning.
So nice to be here.
So I would love to know a little bit about your journey with herbalism, and how you came to work so intimately with plants and with nature.
Yeah. So I guess it starts, as in my childhood and my upbringing, I wasn't raised by a religious family at all. That wasn't really present in my life, nor was any form of spirituality, but I always had this really deep, like, inner knowing that there was more than meets the eye and more than what I was being told was available to me from life. Like, I grew up with like a similar narrative to so many of us of like, go to school, get the job, buy the house, have the family, and like that's what life is about, and that's what's there for you. But I always knew that there was so much more than that, and I became fascinated with different types of religions and more Eastern mindsets really early on. And I would say in high school, I started doing yoga, meditation. I got really into Buddhism for a while. And then time came for me to go to university. And for a long time, I had wanted to be a doctor. And I was really interested in medicine. I have a very scientific brain, and that works really well for me. But when I really thought about it, I knew that I wasn't going to thrive in a hospital setting. There was something about that that just didn't feel like it was fully in alignment with me. And then also with like my budding spiritual beliefs, I was like, those two things seem like oil and water a little bit. So I tried studying different things and eventually dropped out of university. And then I went on a little bit of a soul searching mission to India, where I found Ayurveda and Ayurvedic medicine. And I was like, oh, for the first time, I realized, the roots of where the Western medical practice came from. It comes from all of these like Eastern traditions, right? I was like, oh, you can be like a plant doctor and you can still help people, but using nature and plants, and then also merging like a spiritual practice and like a medicine practice at the same time. So upon returning from that trip, I researched schools. I knew that I wanted to study something that was closer to my lineage. I have Scottish, Irish, Polish, English ancestry. So, as much as I loved Ayurveda and I loved Chinese medicine, I did want to study something that, was a little closer to my lineage, and that had plants that I could be in contact with on a more regular basis. So, I eventually found Western herbalism, which is in itself comes from these Eastern traditions. I just want to be clear about that. As much as all of these places do have their own traditions, they very much do stem from more of those Eastern ones. Yeah, so I studied medical herbalism for 4 years, and I have a diploma of medical herbalism. and it was very clinical, very much of the allopathic Western model. So I learned, anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, all of the biomedical sciences, all of the pharmaceuticals, how they interact with the herbs, etc. And then after I graduated, I kind of went full mystic and went fully down the spiritual path. I joined a mystery school. I studied in a mystery school for 7 years after that. And since then, I've been walking between those worlds and kind of being the bridge between the science and the woo, because that really is how I like to practice.
Wow, wow. I love this story so much. I think that there's something to be said about, wanting to walk kind of a path that feels very integral to who you are as a human being, right? Because you had mentioned, the path of being a doctor, quote unquote, and the assumptions that we have around what that looks like. Yet doing it in a way that feels so in integrity with who you are as a person, as somebody who likes to see things from a holistic perspective and to really weave with the natural world. I think it's so incredibly Virgo of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like this orientation towards health and healing and really weaving with the land. And I think it's really amazing that you were able to, blend those worlds together. And now you have such a diverse array of offerings that you bring to the world, which I think is so amazing that you were able to, parlay all of that experience into something that really is of service.
Yeah,
Also,
I think that's like really the missing piece in a lot of health and wellness is we can get really wormholed into like one modality and like one area of life. But when we really look at health and wellness, it's physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental. And
1000%.
oftentimes people will go really far into one modality and then they'll be like, okay, I've healed all of this stuff, but there's still something there. And
Mhm.
like still this like final little piece that hasn't healed. And usually what I find is you have to go into one of those other pillars.
I would agree wholeheartedly
Very
on that.
practitioners that are versed in all of those things or have the tools to help you with all of those.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that's also just very, you know, not systemic. It's very typical of the Western model to just really be logical and linear about, okay, this
Hmm.
is the one pathway that I have to take, rather than looking at the whole system and the whole human within that system, right? As someone who has a background in social work, it's very much has to do with like person in environment and the environmental factors that are influencing a human and their interaction with the world around them. It's all relationality ultimately.
Yeah. That's like the scientific model as well. It's very reductionist, right?
Mm.
And it reduces things to their smallest parts so we can understand them, which is fantastic and has given us so much information. However, that's not how things behave as a whole, and that's not how an organism behaves as a whole. So I think we have to like really remember to practice. This is something I teach in herbalism as well. Practice changing your vantage point. So looking at things in really, really small and then zooming out and looking at them in a really big way. So we're alternating our perspective from the microcosm to the macrocosm
Mm.
to help us understand how the body, the mind, the spirit is working.
Wow, that's such a useful practice in in every regard. I mean,
Yeah.
not only in the realm of herbalism, but as like a whole, as a mindset in general, to not focus so much on like the, yeah, I think it's really interesting in mindset work as well, right? Like we can so much focus on like the issue that we have, at hand, right? Of like getting so deeply into it. And as you said, it is a wormhole. Like from that one issue, you can spiral out into so many different places, but then, okay, wait a second, what's the actual truth of this matter? Zoom out, have a moment to kind of dissociate yourself from the issue itself, and like, okay, wait a second, I can navigate this differently in a different relationship, right?
Hmm.
Fascinating, fascinating. I would love to also hear a little bit more about your journey with the plants themselves, your personal journey with the plants, because I know that that's a large part of your story as well, of working intimately with them.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many directions I could go with them, but
Maybe the Blue Lotus, because that's the one that I know you for. Possibly.
sure. Yeah, I work really intimately with Blue Lotus. It's funny, as a herbalist, like when people find that out, they're like, "Oh, what's your favorite plant?" And I'm like, "All of them." I'm like, it changes all the time. Like I'll go. And it's like the beauty of plants too. Like I tend to kind of have like a favorite plant of the moment or of the season, and then it will shift and change. And I think that kind of speaks to the changing and flowing nature of humans as well. You know, we're not static beings, and neither is the natural world, so it makes sense to kind of fluctuate and flow with your relationships with them. But the Blue Lotus was introduced to me by a friend of mine and very quickly became one of my most potent teachers to the point where I now have a product line dedicated to Blue Lotus. And the only products I sell are Blue Lotus based. So the one of the reasons I love this plant so much is it's long history. So it originates in northern Africa and is really important to the Egyptians. Like it's all over the hieroglyphs. And very few plants are that present in the hieroglyphs and in, the what we have left of like the physical record of that time frame and that community. So it's obviously incredibly important to them. And one of the reasons I love it so much, being someone who walks the world of science and spirit, is I feel like it integrates you into your body so much while really opening the intuition and the spiritual faculties. So I call it a gateway entheogen in that way, where if someone is maybe intimidated about using a psychedelic or something like that, this one is so soft and so gentle. It isn't a psychedelic, it's an entheogen, right? So it does have some mind or mood altering qualities. However, you're very present in this reality and you're very present in your body. So in that way, it does act as a bridge between the worlds as well. And it's good for so many different things. I have another podcast like just on Blue Lotus where I talk about it for an hour. Um,
We'll
it's
link
like
that.
there's
I'll link
so
that in
many.
the show notes.
Okay, great. It's good for so many different things. And, especially in an era of chronic dysregulation and so many people are working on their nervous systems and, nervous system regulation kind of being a buzzword or buzz concept these days. Blue Lotus is one of the plants that I reach to so often for that. It works on our serotonin and our dopamine pathways. It's an aphrodisiac, it's a nervine, it's a sedative, a relaxant. It stimulates dreaming and lucid dreaming. Most people find their way to Blue Lotus through its dream qualities. However, it has so many more aspects to it. It's antispasmodic, so it helps relax tension in the body. It brings circulation to the pelvic bowl. I know a lot of people use it for painful periods and menstruation and cramping as well. It has the same constituent in it that is in Viagra. So that's one of my favorite facts about it. It's not going to give you the effects of Viagra, so don't worry, and I'm sorry. But it will increase some pelvic blood flow. So you are going to get a little bit of that stimulation, but in no way does it work like Viagra works.
Not as aggressive.
Absolutely not.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's it's very, very special. I mean, I met you at a Blue Lotus ceremony,
Yeah.
um, I believe. Or it was a
Mhm.
ceremony that was happening up at that mansion that we were both part of for a brief moment there. But yeah, very, very, very potent, very potent. I found it very supportive in shadow work, funny enough. Just able to like access as somebody who tends to, live in the dream realm. I just found it very potent for accessing that in a way that felt very like stabilizing and to like
Mhm.
lucid in the sense that I was able to much easier access that from a grounded state rather than to get lost in a lot of the darkness that I was encountering at that time.
Mhm.
Yeah. Very cool. Very, very cool. So I'm definitely going to need to get some more of that from you. I would also love to know a little bit more about your work as an astroherbalist. And if you
Yeah.
could explain to the people what astroherbalism is, because I was a little bit even like, oh, okay, that's very interesting to be working in that way with the plants. So I'm curious if you could
Yeah.
speak to that.
So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with astroherbalism, it's astrology and herbalism. And we think of these as two separate modalities, but in reality, they were actually always combined until pretty recently in history, I would say. Astrology, it has been practiced for thousands of years, pretty much since time immemorial. People were looking up at the sky and using the stars for navigation, using the stars and the planetary movements to guide their seasonal activities. We were much more reliant on the light and dark cycles
Mm.
nature back then than we are now, the growing season, our crops, etc. Um, astrology has really been evolving with humans forever. And, people think it is something that's like a really woo-woo practice. However, it's actually a very scientific practice, and a very mathematical practice and a language in itself.
Mm.
And knowing that you can't separate it from nature and you can't separate it from plants because so much of astrology has to do with light. And what are plants? Products of light and the light of the sun, right? So, bringing that to a more personal level, astroherbalism is a holistic approach that combines the astrology and herbalism to enhance well-being. And you can use it with your natal chart to determine which herbs might be beneficial for you based on planetary placements at the time of your birth, your birth chart. You can also use the plants to assist with your constitution. So, a lot of us are familiar with the elements like earth, air, fire, and water. And all of the astrology signs fall into one of those elements, and that makes up our constitution.
Mm.
So we all have all of the elements as the building blocks of our being, but we have them in different amounts.
Mm.
That's why you see some people that are always cold. And then you see some people that are like wearing shorts in the wintertime.
Mm.
Like the shorts person runs hot. They have a hot constitution. The person that's always cold has a cold constitution. They probably have more earth and more water in
Mm.
their constitution, where the hot person is probably going to have more fire and more air. So,
For you, just a question. For example, if somebody is running more cold, does that mean that they have a little bit more yin energy to them?
possibly.
Okay. Just out
Mhm.
of curiosity, because then that's how I'm kind of conceptualizing it in my mind. Like
Yeah.
yang being the hot and then yin being the cold. Okay. I was just curious about that.
hmm It is more complex than that, but
Of course.
generally speaking, yes.
And it's all like it's the interaction of a variety of different elements within your constitution that are, causing those, yeah, that manifestation in your body.
Yeah, so you also there's your base constitution, which is like your innate makeup, and then there is what's happening and what's presenting as a result of your constitution interacting with the environment.
Gotcha.
And this is where it gets a little tricky and where it requires someone who's very well educated in this. Like, for example, like doctors of Chinese medicine will often try to figure out your constitution, and it may take them multiple sessions to figure that out because they're discerning between the symptoms that are presenting and then like what is your true essence. And that's a doctor of Chinese medicine that's
Mhm.
taken like, 7 years of schooling.
Right. It's like pulling back the layers of what the manifestation is in order to get to the root cause. That makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
totally. So yeah, and I like to look at the practice of astroherbalism again as the as above, so below, going between the microcosm and the macrocosm. Because if you look at the microcosm, which is your chart and your personal astrology, that's on the backdrop of the macrocosm
Mhm.
of our solar system, our galaxy and the universe and the planetary movements. So it really helps you understand your relationship to those things.
Mhm.
And also, I love using the herbs because astrology is very conceptual, at
Mhm.
least in the beginning when a lot of us are getting into it and we're like, okay, the signs, it could emotionally be this, or I might be experiencing this, and it's not tangible,
Mhm.
but the herbs are tangible. So you can taste a spicy herb and understand what hot is and how that feels in your body and how that works with your physiology. And then you can more deeply understand what a hot sign of astrology is.
Mhm. It's
Just for as an
sounds
example.
it sounds to me like you're speaking to like knowledge versus wisdom a
Mm,
lot of ways, right? Because knowledge a lot of the time lives in our minds, and you can have the whole spectrum of
of understanding, but there's a very big difference between an embodied knowing, an embodied gnosis, rather than an intellectual understanding of what those plants mean to you. So I really love that description that you just gave.
Oh, that's great.
Sorry, I feel like I interrupted you there, so please continue.
Yeah. And another thing too, I have this is like one of my hot takes
Please.
as an astrologer is personal astrology is really popular right now. We're all looking to astrology to understand ourselves, the deeper layers of our being, our emotional mental states, but astrology isn't about you
Mm,
at all. It can be, and you can use personal astrology to really help you. However, the majority of astrology and astrological practice and all of, the last few thousand years of data that we have is not personal data.
mhm, mhm.
And most of like the personal data that we have is actually medical astrology, where back in the day, if you were a doctor and you weren't using astrology, you were considered a quack. Now
Fascinating.
I would say the opposite is true.
Interesting. It's so fascinating to me. I mean, there's a book that I have in my in my Audible account just waiting to be purchased. And it effectively spoke to like how women were the ones who were the doctors, the medicine people, the people who were in an interactive relationship to the world around them, and how that's been completely and totally distorted within the modern medical paradigm. And it's only
Hmm.
within the last 200 years that that's really, shifted. So all of
Yeah.
that knowledge and wisdom that you spoke to in medical astrology, like that makes so much sense to me, to be in an interactive relationship to life and the cycles and currents and patterns of life, rather than being in a singular individualistic relationship. It's rather a communal kind of understanding of the cycles and patterns and rhythms.
Hmm.
It just seems much more matriarchal to have that kind of orientation.
Yeah, and a lot more holistic.
Mhm.
And, the patriarchal scientific method hates that because it's
Absolutely.
harder to pinpoint.
Mhm.
It's harder to, create. I mean, I do think that astrology is a very methodical, exact science, but you have to learn the language of it.
Mm.
And a lot of people who are non-believers, I'm like, well, it's hard to understand a language you don't know. Like if you don't know Russian and someone starts speaking Russian to you, you're like, that means nothing to me,
Mm.
right?
And I really do wonder, is this something that this, oh, sorry, one second. My question to you would be, is this something that we can reconnect to on a very natural and organic way by being in relationship to the world around us?
Yes, that is one of my favorite ways to teach this is I'm a triple Virgo. So, very nature oriented, body oriented. I like to touch, taste, and feel things to know them. And a lot of the really, abstract woo-woo concepts are really hard for me to understand. And
Mm.
I'm like, I conceptually get them, but I'm like, I need to know like the physics and the mechanics of the universe that makes that woo-woo thing true, even though I know it's like true in my heart of hearts of like, we're all energy, light bodies, all of that. I'm like, okay, that's all wonderful, but like unless I have like some tangible proof or like experiential understanding of that, it's hard to relate.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And that's one reason why I like the plant world so much is that you can go outside and like look at like 1 centimeter square of earth or land and just watch the magic of that nature unfold. You
Mm.
can see how all of like the bugs are interacting with each other. You can see nuances in the dirt and the soil that you've never seen before.
Mm.
Um, and then once you start understanding a little bit more about plants, so all of the plants have a planetary ruler to them. So, like, take cedar, for example, is ruled by Jupiter. Um, Going and being with cedar, touching the cedar, sitting with the cedar, tasting what that cedar tastes like. You're holding up cedar right now. Burning cedar, smelling that, seeing what physiologically happens to your body when you burn cedar and you're in the presence of that smoke, because
Mhm.
you are having physiological changes when you're smelling something. And I love learning in this way because it brings really tangible experiences to some more abstract concepts,
Mm.
um, and can kind of take some of the more woo aspects out of it and kind of coming full circle with it.
1000%. I really love that. And I really think that there's this kind of bridge that's happening, I feel, on a collective level of recognizing that we need to get out of our minds and really weave our embodied experience back to the land and back to like having a reciprocal kind of relationship and being in a relationality with that. For example, the other night, I was tossing and turning. I'm like, I have to get out of bed and I gotta grab my cedar and I have to light it and I just have to put it around my bed. And it was a totally intuitively led feeling. And I'm like, oh, very interesting. And I don't really know the mechanics of it, but it just felt very intuitive to do that in that moment. I'm like, oh, interesting. And then that night I had crazy dreams. So it's it's I think that there is really something to be said about like the personal relationship that you have with that and being able to really be present with what is here and now within the mineral, elemental, plant consciousness world.
Hmm. Yeah, and the plants really do want to communicate with us. And the plants are some of the most selfless beings that I know. It's really incredible to develop a relationship with them. And I really truly believe that the more we just go outside and develop relationships with the plants and the nature that's around us has such a ripple effect through all of humanity and like on a social scale, on a political scale. Like connection to nature is a political thing. Being able to do that and having nature around you is a political thing. And the more that we value that and the more that we connect with that and prioritize that kind of connection, the greater change we're going to see in the world. And it feels so small. Like it feels really small to like go for a walk and be like, wow, this cedar is so beautiful. And to understand that that is something that creates, societal change.
No,
But it
I completely agree with you. I completely and totally agree with you. I think that we've just been so incredibly disconnected from our own intuitive nature and our own deepest connection to the world around us. And that's truly the source of our power, is when we can weave those two things together, right? Like my intuitive inner world back to the land and allowing that to hold me and to be
yeah,
in a very deep relationship with the consciousness of cedar, for example, right? And recognizing that that consciousness lives within me too.
yeah. It's a really beautiful thing. And it is healing that I mean, I really think that the severing of the intuition and like the spirituality is a function of capitalistic patriarchy. And the more that we heal that, the more we're healing these broken systems. And one of the things that I see that has happened throughout history is, back when we were much more practicing our ancestral ways, like there was no intermediary between you and God or you and the
Mhm.
divine. It was like you and nature, and it was very easy for you to experience um, that connection. And, as religion progressed and all of that, there became an intermediary between you and God, and your felt sense and your word and your connection was no longer right. There was somebody telling you how to do that and how to be connected to that. Um, and going back to nature is one of the ways that we heal that and really take our power back and some of our autonomy.
I completely agree. I do also feel like the pendulum has swung so far in the other direction that we are coming back to this, deep reciprocity with the land and what it has to teach us. And I think we have so much to learn from those who are deeply intertwined and have not been, separated from nature for very long. I think to indigenous traditions of the land that we're currently on, right?
Mhm.
Like those practices have been people have been forcibly removed from their land, from their lineage, from their traditions, etc. And that's something that is systemic within our own kind of within a Western framework. That's only history repeating itself because we separated ourselves from the land in order to be in the mind, right? And then we brought that narrative to this land. And it's like that's not harmony. That's not relationality in any way, shape, or form. But I truly believe that we are all indigenous to the land, regardless of your
We're all indigenous
background,
to somewhere.
to somewhere.
Yeah. And, you know, I think something that, especially like as a white person, and I think other white people forget, is that we got colonized as well.
Mhm.
And then we became the colonizer.
Mhm.
So there's twofold to heal there. There's our own trauma of being separated from the land and having our earth-based ways taken from us. You know, a lot of European people have histories and ancestry of like people being burned at the stake, and like I have Irish ancestry, and like the Irish people were enslaved long before
Mhm.
people of color were enslaved, and the Irish people were brought, you know, around the world as well. Um, so that's something really interesting to grapple with our ancestral healing is, you know, healing the ways that we were colonized and the ways that our ancestry has continued to colonize as well.
And
And
the
just like
talent.
remembering to hold that and heal that.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. And I took a course, not this was a few years ago. It was narratives and the ways that we have, we have imposed our own narratives onto this land, right? And without the reconciliation of those stories, it's impossible to like if we don't do an inner sense of reconciliation within ourselves, then how can we relate on an external level to reconcile the relationships that are around us, right? So it comes back to what you were saying of as above, so below, as within, so without, right?
Mhm.
And using
Yeah.
plant as kind of an initiator for that reconnection to ourselves, I think is really potent, really, really, really powerful.
And that can feel really heavy and like a lot to hold. So if anyone who's listening really feels that weight in their body and emotion in their life, like going to the land and asking the land to help you heal is really helpful and essential. And with that as well, getting connected with the traditional keepers of those lands will also be helpful because it's one thing to appreciate nature and all of that, and then it's another thing to connect with communities who have been on the land that you're on for
Mhm.
thousands of years,
Mhm.
um, and who are the traditional peoples of those lands and have more, you know, lineage experience with caring for those lands and how to do that in a respectful way.
Mhm. And I would endeavor to say that also re-enlivens you to relate in a good way to the world around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very powerful. Very, very powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff. I would love to know some of the offerings that you have.
Yeah, I do one-on-one consultation. I do astrology readings, tarot readings, and I have a medical herbalism practice as well. My practice focuses on womb health and womb healing, specifically period pain and fertility. I mostly coming from personal experience, you know, with so many people in the healing modalities, their wounds become their gifts. And I am someone who had chronic period pain, I have endometriosis, sexual trauma, you know, you name it, I've probably been through it. So now I'm incredibly passionate about healing the wombs of the world and helping people heal their period pain because period pain is not normal, period. So I have programs that focus on that, and the intersections of womb health with digestion and mental health as well. And then I also do herbalism courses, in person and online, and I do lots of plant walks and nature connection in the world.
Fantastic. I'm going to link more of that in the show notes. It's been so wonderful to have you here and to be absorbing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, babe.
Mhm.
Thank you for being here and for letting this naked conversation move you. If something stirred in your heart or body, or if you felt seen, softened, awakened, or curious, I'd love to know more. Come find me on Instagram and share what touched you. The intention is to make this a living and breathing relationship, not just a performance. And if you're longing to go deeper, to be met in the raw, and to tend to what's ready to unfold in your soul's calling, my one-to-one sessions are an intimate container for that, where we meet soul to soul, body to body, and in devotion to your truth and your light. You'll find details in the show notes. Until next time.